Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and kick this meeting off. Let's get it started.
Hey, Craig, I don't know if, sorry, don't mean to jump in, but I don't know if others are having the same issue, but your mic seems a little quiet.
Testing. Sound check. Can you guys hear me?
I think it's about this. I think it's about the same, Craig. I can hear you. I think I might know what Todd's saying. I think it's a little more quiet, but I can hear you.
I just turned my speakers up, Craig. That helped, but it is a little quiet.
Okay.
I am a little older, but there is a bit of a difference. But I think you're good.
Is that a theme that we're going to have established now?
Yeah.
Jeez, sorry.
It's all good.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order for our Workforce Talent and Development Board Forestry Workforce Steering Subcommittee for June 10th, 2024. I have established on my list that we do have a quorum, and so I will introduce myself, Craig Pope, Polk County Commissioner, a member of the WTDB board, and co-chair of this austere steering committee. I hand it off to Harris.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today. As Craig had mentioned, so I just had let John Whitley in, it looked like, a heads up. So anyway, my name's Harris Ryback. I'm the director of our Tribal Employment Rights Office here for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. Also a Workforce Talent Development Board member, and the other side of the co-chair piece here for this Forestry Workforce Committee. So like I said, appreciate you taking the time today. Craig and I are going to use this as an opportunity to kind of elaborate a little bit more about kind of why everybody's gathered here at the table, and it'll be a good platform to kind of ask some questions and kind of forecast what things will look like moving forward. So again, appreciate you taking the time today.
Okay, thanks. In the interest of trying to keep this organized so I don't have to call out each individual that's on the screen and miss somebody, please look at your agenda. You are listed as members on the side. I would like to go next with Mindy, and everybody's in alphabetical order. So Mindy.
Hi, I'm Mindy Crandall. I'm an assistant professor of forest policy at Oregon State University in the Department of Forest Engineering, Resources, and Management.
Hi, I'm Chris Edwards. I'm president of the Oregon Forest Industries Council, also known as OFIC. We represent large industrial landowners and mill manufacturers in matters of state policy, not federal, but state.
Is Courtney with us? Okay, Brandon.
Good afternoon, Dave Cooner, Vice President of Hampton Lumber out of Salem.
Jim Paul.
Hi there, I'm Jim Paul, Executive Director at the Oregon Forest Resources Institute. And just to let you know, Julie Woodward, last on the list, she was unable to make it because of the conflict. She's our Director of Forestry at the Institute.
Thank you.
I am Nick Smith. I'm with the American Forest Resource Council. We represent loggers, manufacturers, and others that have an interest in public lands management, and I'm pleased to be part of this committee.
Thank you.
Hi. And I'm Kyle Stevens. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwestern Oregon Workforce Investment Board, or SOIB. We're the workforce board serving Kingsbury and Douglas counties, based in Keys Bay.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Sullivan-Astor. I'm the Forest Policy Manager for Associated Oregon Loggers, and was very engaged with the HEC and others in the legislative session getting this passed.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brett Talbot, Human Resource Business Partner here at the Oregon Department of Forestry. Currently in a work out of class as the Interim Workforce Development Manager here with the agency.
Josh? John?
I'm John Whiteley. I'm currently working with the Southwestern Oregon Workforce Investment Board. I convene the manufacturing sector partnership. I'm involved with Riddle Roots and the Rural Success Initiative in Coos Curry and Douglas.
Okay, I don't see any members still outstanding, so Todd?
Well, thanks, Craig. My name is Todd Nell. I'm the director of the Workforce and Talent Development Board, or it is affectionately also known as the WTDB. Our role, for those of you who might not be familiar, is to assist and advise the governor, the legislature, and public agencies in a number of different spaces that include strategy, policy, and planning, as well as accountability, continuous improvement, and oversight as it relates to workforce education and training in the state.
And was Doug able to join us, Todd?
I think, great question. Sorry, I should have briefed you on that. I think he was originally not going to be, but oh, there he is. Yep, he's here.
I'm having some serious technology problems. Sorry about that. Doug Denning. I work at the Office of Workforce Investments at the HEC with Todd. I'm the director of the Oregon Youth Works Board and serve in a youth workforce development policy capacity as an advisor.
Excellent. And Sydney?
I'm Sydney King. I'm support to the Office of Workforce Investments and also the Workforce and Talent Development Board, and I'm your logistics and coordinator person. Reach out with any questions. Thanks.
And Josh, I see you back up there again. You want to introduce yourself?
I think he might be having mic issues.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm Josh Wampler with P&R Wampler Logging in Klamath Falls, Oregon.
Excellent. Did I miss anybody? All right. We'll try to avoid doing that again. Now y'all know each other. Next up is public comment. Do we have anybody joining us here that we haven't already talked to that wants to make a public comment?
Just to let you know, we did not receive any written public comment beforehand.
Okay, excellent. We don't have a consent agenda yet. So next up is an overview of the project. And again, we're co-chairs, Harris and I. So I'm going to step back for a moment and let Harris take some of this.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, so like I said, I don't think I can stress enough just the appreciation we have for everybody here taking the time to kind of hear Craig and I out and hopefully get your engagement for the duration of this this committee. Essentially, kind of what our goal is to take the input from all of you, kind of and look at some different variables of the forestry workforce and what kind of where we're at in the state. And I think that's a big reason for the diversity on this board, to be able to get all these different kind of views of forestry in the great state of Oregon. And so the ultimate goal is to hire a contractor to conduct this formal study with the input of this committee, obviously, on things to look for and things to bring up. And kind of, I guess, in the 10,000 foot elevation, that's kind of really what we're looking for. I think it'd be nice to kind of get, I think we have some time on the agenda for some discussions around that. But Craig, if you think now's a good time to maybe open it up some and ask maybe some questions that come right to mind on folks. Like I said, kind of the ultimate goal is to be able to come up with a structure to then kind of pass on and let a contractor do a lot of the footwork in terms of the actual study itself. And then, as we do at the WTDB, kind of deliver that study kind of up the chain and let kind of some of those things that are found kind of go to the next level, which, as Todd states, then either affects or doesn't affect kind of the legislature and then kind of how things move forward in our state that way.
So Craig, you're on mute.
As you can see on your agenda, we're going to have a charter discussion briefly, and then I think we're going to have a lot of discussion about the RFP and the statement of work. So I suspect that anything that you all might want to add about how we got here would be important. I've visited with Amanda some, and I know she has a deep history of how we got here. And so I invite her and any of you that that want to set context for why we're here. This is the right place to do that. Oh, one more thing. So we set this meeting as a 1 hour meeting, but I don't want to shut us down at 1 hour. So if you have opportunity and can have more discussion after 2 o'clock, I'm certainly wide open for that. I think our staff team is as well. So I don't want to shut this down. This is a very, very important topic for all of us. And so I want to make certain to allow us enough time to at least have discussion and move this along.
Yeah, and I want to echo that too with what Craig said. Is, I mean, today was an important meeting to be set. I think it sets the tone for kind of any meetings preceding this. And yeah, so it's just important, I think, when we all leave this meeting today, that there's some good understanding from everybody that's around this table on a couple different kind of facets. One, obviously, what's your opportunity to engage for the duration of being on this committee? And then two, we definitely want people to leave with a full understanding of what we're wanting to get out of the committee members here. You know, time is precious, and we all have a lot of busy schedules and things going on. So it's really important that we kind of make these variables clear and deliverables clear. And a big part of that we will cover in this meeting, and hopefully by the end of it, there's a really good structure, and you guys understand kind of what we're wanting to get out of this. So.
Well, I'm happy to speak since Commissioner Pope highlighted Associated Oregon Loggers. And I'll drop in the chat, and HEC staff are completely able to put this in the meeting notes and online, but just the one pager that Associated Oregon Loggers created for these sections of 1552. So that goes to our one pager that we had in OLIS. So that is public, just for some additional outlining of where AOL was at in working on this bill and incorporating other sector perspectives. And I think as far as one of the reasons why we wanted to move this forward, and I think a lot of our other partners have been engaged with us in wanting to move something like this forward, is just a recognition of the need for primarily more data around our workforce. We know a lot about, I would say we have kind of a inch deep and a mile wide type information, but there are a lot of sectors and sections of our workforce and components that we know far smaller amount of information about, like demographics, like really digging into capacity to meet the needs of today and tomorrow, and this connection point of tying into things like the governor's efforts around housing and some of our state efforts around natural and working lands and climate solutions and fire. There's a big conversation about fire funding and mitigation funding, and what is our current capacity, what is our future need. So tying into some of those pieces, trying to create a larger narrative around the data that we have, but then collecting additional data in those spaces, so that we can also be competitive as it relates to workforce development monies at both the state and federal level. We really don't have that much information, that much comprehensive information about our demographics, for instance. And so when we try to compete against healthcare, technology, advanced manufacturing, and other sectors for national workforce dollars, it can be a lot more challenging, even though we have a really great narrative to present in the space. And I think that we have a really good story to tell, and the need is there as far as maintaining the forest sector and the forestry workforce, especially in the West, where it is such a large part of what we do, the fabric of our economy and communities. So that's a little bit of how we got here, what we're interested in. I think some of the other pieces around current pathways and post-secondary and kind of primary education, and what do we have, really getting a comprehensive look at what do we have and where do we need to go. And so I think we have all the right people on the committee. I'm really excited to see so many familiar faces here. I think, we'll get there, and I'm excited to see what everybody else thinks, or what everybody else feels like we got right or got wrong in the bill. and as far as the components of the report, or I'd really like to know what people are excited about, or what people are hoping we learn more about through this report.
Thank you, Amanda. I wanted to pull up real quick. I have it on my office computer, but I wanted to pull up well, here, I'll just read it off my computer here. I wanted to pull up kind of just, I know I gave the 10,000 foot kind of view of things, but I wanted to just quickly read just a couple of the bullet points on the project description of why we're all here. To assess the current forestry workforce, the workforce's demographic and needs, and the community benefits of forestry. The assessment required under this paragraph shall take into consideration state plans and initiatives, as Amanda mentioned, related to forest health, climate, and economic development that may influence the demands of the forestry workforce. B, collaborate with Oregon business associations that represent private forest employers and forest management enterprises to assess the future forestry workforce capacity requirements, as well as the potential impacts, benefits, and opportunities for the forestry workforce. There's just one more after, there's a couple, 2, 3 short ones after this, but I think as I read this, you kind of hopefully will grasp maybe why you're sitting at this table. Consult with state and federal economic development, labor, employment, and licensing agencies to account for current tracking and monitoring techniques for the forestry workforce, and to ensure that the study is not duplicative of other studies. Build upon whatever has already been compiled, including but not limited to WTDB Talent Assessment, Oregon Forestry Resources Institute 5-year study, and university studies. Consult with state and federal natural resource agencies to align priorities and understand future workforce needs, and consult with state training and education agencies to fully understand career pathways and training opportunities for the forestry workforce. So much like kind of the title of the committee, heavily focused on the forestry workforce in the state. And that's where I feel each of you really can play a significant role. And we're kind of, strategically chosen to provide the input that you guys have on just that forestry workforce in the state, the need, and then like Amanda mentioned, kind of with other experience that you guys may have with other House bills or previous studies, to bring your expertise to the table will be significant to make sure that we choose the right person and provide them the right guidance, if you will, to successfully see a study through. So.
Sorry, you're gonna have a lot of opportunity to jump in with lots of ideas and thoughts as we move along. Better hand it over to Todd so that we can do our housekeeping elements here with the WTDB agreements and the subcommittee charter.
Great. Thank you so much, Craig. I'll try to move us along quite quickly here so that we can spend as much time as possible reviewing and any discussion that needs to occur around the RFP. 2 goals that we have that I'm going to speak to here quickly. are for you to better understand how the WTDB and its committees and task forces are expected based on our Workforce and Talent Development Board agreements to conduct business. And then also to review the draft charter that we have compiled. We think we got it pretty close. And so we want to share that with you today, hopefully resulting in you approving the charter. So in terms of member agreements, I'll go ahead and share my screen. These were in your packet, and as I said, they are the expectations that the WTDB has for how we conduct business. Hopefully you had a chance to read these prior to the meeting. I am not going to read them. You can do that by yourself, but I did want, on behalf of Craig and Harris, as we plan this, to really call out 4 key components here, which we all think are important, expected, and then have details underneath each of those 4. So the expectation is that we work collaboratively to get this good work done in the spirit of transparency and trust, and not surprisingly, utilize data-driven decision-making in the work that we do, and to also be bold and innovative together so that we can achieve the best possible outcomes in the product, that being the report, that we possibly can. We're showing these to you for a couple of reasons. One, again, just to let you know how we're going to conduct business, and the expectation is that I think Craig might touch on this a little as well. Be committed to the committee, to show up, be engaged, participate, and live by these expectations. But then also, they're really not negotiable, but we just wanted to toss it out there. If anybody has any objections around these, please let us know, and we can address those as needed. We don't expect that to happen, but just tossing it out there. So moving on to the charter, let me share that screen. And again, I am not going to read the entire charter to you. Hopefully you had a chance to see that. Sydney, could you pull it up? I can't seem to find it.
Yep, just 1 second.
Thank you.
While they're looking that up, I would just let all the members know that these principles that you were just looking at have been adopted by the entire WTD board and its subcommittee, the Continuous Improvement Committee. So we feel like that these are reasonable principles and guidelines to operate under. And so they've been a number of months in the making and ratification.
Great, thank you for those clarifying remarks, Craig. So on to the charter. Hopefully, as I said, you had an opportunity to read this one as well. I did think it might make sense to just touch on the scope quickly, and also make sure you know that we have wiggle room in this scope to add additional pieces as the committee sees fit. So it's about collecting data on participation and completion of employment outcomes for programs, identifying the number, type, and locations of businesses, organizations, and other education workforce providers, composing the forestry sector in the state, collecting data broadly and comprehensively, and well, as Amanda talked about earlier, assess current and projected forestry workforce needs, identifying challenges faced by the forestry sector, assessing the current forestry workforce and workforce demographics and needs and the community benefits of forestry, collaborating with Oregon business associations that represent private forest employers and forest management enterprises, to include future forestry workforce capacity requirements, potential impacts, benefits, and opportunities for the forestry workforce, consulting with state and federal economic development, labor, employment, and licensing agencies to account for current tracking and monitoring techniques for the forestry workforce. And making sure the study is not duplicative of other studies, yet leveraging other studies, as we mentioned earlier. For example, the talent assessment, OFRE's good study that was also conducted, and others. Consult with state and federal natural resource agencies for alignment and better understanding. Consult with state training and education agencies to fully understand career pathways, training opportunities within the sector. And here's that sort of wiggle room caveat bullet is this last one. Be responsive to other related needs. This is the contractor we're talking about that may surface during the project as determined by this committee, either by vote or other means that are agreed to by the committee. So we do have wiggle room, as we lean into those member agreements and the way we conduct the business to make sure that, we all collaboratively get what we want and need out of the project. Timelines here, launch date, obviously today. We want to get that RFP awarded ASAP. We've got 4 deliverables in addition to this kickoff meeting and the kickoff meeting with the selected contractor. We want to get the plan approved in August, executed through August 24 to March 25, because we need to get that draft report done by May, because ultimately this report is right around the corner, although it seems far away, June 30th of next year. So we've got a list of the partners, the tenants, which tie back, I think, nicely in many ways to those member agreements. We've got a list of all you good members and leaders and thinkers from around the state. We've got a category called resource leads here. If Sydney scrolls a little bit further down, there's a spot there with a TBD to be determined. But that's just a space that we can, I guess we could fill it in as we go, or just understand that it's iterative. So for example, if we have guest speakers come in, or guest groups of folks that come in and share information, have conversations with us, that sort of thing and more, we've got a space called out there for that. I think we three, well, again, I'll say on behalf of the 2 co-chairs, really wanted to lean into meeting procedures here in decision making. So they've got 3 bullets here that we've excerpted, as you can see, from the Workforce and Talent Development Board bylaws around how important it really is to make sure that you attend regularly. It's expected. And as is the case on the state board, if you can't be here, we need to know about it. So please abide by, this framework here, and let us know if emergency comes up, or if you've got a, serious conflict with your full-time, work, etc. If you could just send an email to Sydney or I and notify us per these requirements, we thank you very much for abiding by that. And then consistent with ORS, we also wanted to point out that any member who fails to attend 2 consecutive meetings and doesn't, stay in communication with us, stands a chance of forfeiting their seat because it's, an ORS, and the expectation is that, hey, you've committed, you're here, and we really want you to show up and help lead and inform this project and the deliverables. Decision making, as Sydney said early on, is by simple majority quorum, 50+1. There are 16 total of you. So in order to conduct business, we need 9 present. And oh, by the way, an interesting side bit that occurred in the Continuous Improvement Committee, which I've talked with Craig Pope and Harris about, and John Whiteley as well. I did, as I promised in the last Continuous Improvement Committee, reach out to the Ethics Commission to see if any of the state public meeting laws had changed. They have not, and I was correct in what I said at the last KIC meeting. We must take a vote either in person or in person virtually on a platform similar to this, like Teams, in order to approve anything that the committee needs to make a decision on. We cannot do email vote, and there is no other way at present per public meeting law to calculate a quorum. I did give them some innovative and creative ideas on things to consider, and both the agency and the legislative liaison at the agency are sort of exploring potential options for suggestions for improvement later on down the road. So that's about it from my view here, Craig and Harris. And again, I think everybody, we were hoping to get the charter approved today. So I'll toss it back to you, Craig.
I'll toss it to Harris. You're muted.
I was asking, who do I toss it to then?
Harris, I think we just need a motion to approve the charter as written.
Yeah. So does anybody like to make a motion to approve the charter as written, and how Todd kind of ran it down to all of us?
Yep, this is Kyle Stevens. I'd make a motion to approve the charter as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. John Whiteley.
Thank you, John. So we have a motion and a second. So that
You have a hand up. Amanda's got her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Amanda. My apologies.
No, it's okay. I was just going to note on page 3, it says Association of Oregon Loggers. We're Associated Oregon Loggers, so just a typo there on our name.
Oh yeah, apologies. We'll get that corrected right away.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to ask, so many that know me on this call know that I am getting pretty pregnant. 34 weeks pregnant this week. So my boss, our executive, will be replacing me on the committee. And so I don't know if we want to add an additional line in the charter that allows for that or recognizes that ability if there needs to be an alternate, or if we are allowed to have an alternate identified from the organization. But just want to make sure that that is recognized and allowed within the charter.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first off, congratulations. I didn't know that. That's wonderful news. Thanks for sharing that. And I think we're okay. I appreciate you sharing that information with us right up front, Amanda. That helps. And then we'll make note of that for the record. And then when he rolls in and you roll off, we'll just make sure that we, save that for posterity's sake. So we're good. I don't think there's anything else that we need to do.
Thank you, Amanda. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, just a similar comment on a typo in here on page 3. Actually, our organization's written correctly in the partners section that says Oregon Forest Resources Institute, but under membership for myself and Julie, it says Oregon Forestry Resources. So if you could just correct the forestry to forest so they're consistent. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Apologies for the oversight. We'll get it right taken care of.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, same page there under membership. I'll gladly yield to Chris Edwards as the sole Oregon Forest Industries Council member. And you could shorten mine to just Hampton Lumber and Family Forests.
Will do.
Thank you. Any other questions? I did want to, there was a motion and a second that I would like to ask if all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
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 I guess that was all for in favor. Any opposed? For any reason, any abstentions? Okay, thanks everybody. And thank you for catching those typos too. If that's the breadth of the issues with the charter, then I'll gladly take take a couple typos for sure. It looks like Todd, and I'm sure speaking for Craig, that's fine with us. So yeah, with that, what else was on our agenda after the approved charter, which is great. We got that. What time is it? 1:30. It looks like we're right on schedule. If we want to review the RFP, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think we were scheduled to toss it over to our friend and colleague, Doug Denning.
Okay.
Doug has a sharp, hard stop at 2 o'clock. So I think he's going to tee up the RFP.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, thank you. And Sydney, if you happen to have a copy of the scope of work, I don't have connectivity other than just my regular cell phone right now. That'd be awesome.
Yep, I'm on it.
Thank you. So I really don't know the best way to do this. What we wanted to do was to get a document put together for you all to look at and dissect and discuss. And so this was meant to be, you know, a starting place for that discussion. We used a form or a template that we typically use within the HEC when we do an RFP. I did want to just state at the very beginning too, while this isn't the full RFP, our procurement department is working on putting this together. Anything that the procurement department will add are the legal requirements and won't have anything to do necessarily with this statement of work. So the statement of work that we're looking at, while it's not the true RFP, it is the nuts and bolts of what will get posted. So with that, I don't know, Craig and Harris, how would you like to do this? I mean, do we want to just kind of walk through the different sections? Do you want to open it up for individuals or, you know, comments, and we can capture those notes and make changes as needed? What do you think would work the best?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I think that the latter. I'm going to trust that all our members here are professionals that have seen multiple warnings about this information and probably have had a chance to go through it. And so I would suggest that there's probably questions or comments first about particular sections from any of the members. I'd be surprised if this thing just went right straight through without comments first. So any of you that may have comments or thoughts about this statement of work, put your hand up so we can start. There we go. Jim.
Yeah, thanks. I just had, I think it's maybe a question, but also a comment under section 2, project description and scope, scrolling down to the comprehensive assessment and report scope, where it's got A through G. I'm seeing, I mean, understandably, this in large part is about looking at the broad scope generally around different facets of workforce and all of the important components around workforce and future needs. I'm wondering, is there going to be a piece of this, or does the committee want to have a piece of this, or we are asking for some level of interpretation that can help us prioritize? And by that, I mean, you know, this report ultimately is going to come up with a lot of numbers, is going to show the status of different types of jobs in the sector and looking out ahead where we're seeing challenges and not. Are we going to have enough information for us or others to look at and say and figure out how to prioritize where do we need to look at more closely and more harder and focus on versus other parts of the workforce in the future? Sort of where are the pressure points, rather than just sort of a general, here are all the numbers, here are all the needs. That might make it harder to sort of for the committee to get to, well, where if we want to prioritize and be strategic, making sure we have the information where we can make that assessment. So, and as I start with saying, is that an assessment? And those are honestly, it's a question that we want to actually have the contractor do to some level, where we can then pick it up from a policy perspective to sort of make the final assessment? Or is that something that we just would want to do on our end and not have the contractor try to talk about magnitude and relative sort of differences between different parts of the workforce sector?
Harris, can I jump in here on that one?
Please do. That was a great question.
So my thinking is, again, looking at the timeline of the work, the interaction between this group and the contractor, I'm thinking that once the contractors, once we've chosen one and we want to sit down and have our conversation with them, I think that question or that set of questions is worthy of asking them if they have the capacity to do that and what their thoughts are about how we prioritize. I agree with you. And I think that we need to ask them what their thoughts are on getting that done. If they don't give us very good thoughts, then I guess we tell them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Jim, and I'll echo what Craig said too. I think that is the best approach in terms of, once we're able to communicate with the contractor, I think that's a good opportunity to kind of dive deeper into any of the specifics that may be needed to provide some of this input. Because I think you're right. I mean, the goal is to get precise, well-structured information from the study, and getting particular data will be important. And I'm sure with everybody sitting at the table, there'll definitely be different aspects and different approaches to be able to provide some of that to the contractor, so then they can take it and run with it. So thank you, Craig, and thanks for the question, Jim. Any
Great,
other questions?
thank you.
We did have, let me see real quick.
You got Amanda's got her hand
Harris, it looks, oh, sorry. Good job.
Oh, sorry, I did, for some reason I didn't see that. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Amanda.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I trust that your intent was to call on me eventually. So, so I have a somewhat similar question to Jim, kind of going off of what he said. I guess within this RFP, or within this scope of work that'll be tied to the RFP, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding the requirements of the contractor to engage this body throughout the process, and clear expectations for the contractor or the consultant in that space, recognizing that there are a lot of experts. The forest sector is large and complicated. And so, this group's kind of strength as far as the process is really in having robust, frequent conversation points with the contractor, and recognizing that they may not have all the answers, but this body will be able to identify whether it's studies or data sources or pressure points that could help create efficiencies for that contractor. So I'm just wondering where that fits in, if there's an additional section that needs to be included to outline that, or if we're expecting very, very, very detailed proposals from the folks that would be applying for this.
Craig, I could pass it to you, but I think one of my first thoughts is, Todd, if you want to provide just some your take as far as the WTDB and what are generally with these kind of studies and these committees, what the level of input to the contractor would be. I know Craig is involved in some other committees that way, so if you'd like to elaborate on how you've seen it done thus far and how maybe it relates to this committee, I think that'd be sufficient to maybe provide some guidance to Amanda. Great question, Amanda.
Yeah, sure, Harris, and thank you for your question, Amanda. I think that this statement of work generally at a high level mirrors many other similar types of studies that we have done on different topics, different sectors, including the talent assessment that we just finished up and launched at the recent Talent Summit, as well as numerous continuous improvement committee assessments. I think the strategy has been, and it seems to have worked pretty well, is to help with sort of answering those questions by covering it off in a kickoff meeting and and other planning meetings that occur, Amanda. So instead of getting too prescriptive right up front and going down into details, to be prepared to talk with them during the kickoff meeting and subsequent planning meetings after we better understand sort of what they're thinking of in terms of a project plan that they'll, pull together and bounce off of us and create with our input and feedback. We've just found that sort of a strategy works better. And so that's where we started with this. That said, we're flexible sorts. And if the committee would like to take a different tact and approach in terms of the way we do this, that's definitely an option as well.
And I just have a follow-up, if that's okay. The co-chairs. Yeah, that's
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. That's great, Todd. I guess my question then is around how do we judge the efficacy of any given contractor? If we have an expectation that there is going to be, robust communication and that, they're going to follow the agreements that we've lined out for ourselves, they're going to follow those for us too, and recognize that this body has a significant level of expertise. I feel like that's something that could go in the scope of work as far as processing, so that we're not making assumptions about expectations, that those expectations are lined out up front, so that I don't know if it's you at the HEC or if we have any engagement in selecting the contractor, but to just ensure that everybody's kind of singing off the same sheet of music, and that there aren't sort of these unspoken assumptions being made about expectations.
So just to clarify, are you suggesting to include the WTDB agreement as a reference document so that when they get to the task number 1 of review of the documents, that would be one that they would familiarize themselves with?
No, not necessarily, but more that if the expectation is that there's frequent communication with this body, and that we're seen as a partner rather than just a simple rubber stamp reviewing committee, that is set up front within the scope of work so that they can work that into their project plan.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and I failed to mention that, but we typically do work closely with the contractors. Oftentimes they will attend WTDB full board meetings and give status reports. Oftentimes they will attend other committees and give status reports. And obviously they would be requested to be a part of these committee meetings on a regular basis to help manage the project in partnership with you all. So that is typically the way that we have found things to be most successful as well. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, again, I agree with you. I think that is the best mechanism, but if we don't include it in the scope of work, then it's sort of an unspoken expectation. So I guess that's my question.
We'll make sure that there's language in there that alludes to that and make sure that that is an expectation in terms of communications and interactions with the committee for the project.
So if I could just interrupt, I think I see something that could help here. I noticed on task 4 on page 3, the last sentence makes a statement essentially to that effect. I think, Amanda, are you wanting to see something like that statement, perhaps associated with task 2 with the project plan, and even, I don't know if it'd be perfect task 3, but is that the type of sentence acknowledgement, Amanda, that maybe you want to see more broadly applied? That might be a simpler fix, since there's language already in there to that effect, and it's simply acknowledging that interaction is going to happen throughout to some degree.
Yeah, I think that's a good catch, Jim. And maybe, broadening that into some of the other language, because you're right, it is kind of buried there. Maybe it's under the direct language under task 3 or under, 3 tasks and deliverables, more kind of incorporated there. I think that would help me.
Okay, will do.
Before I get to Mindy, I did just want to say real quick, thank you for that input, Amanda, because that was something that both Craig and I and Todd had discussed previously, and wanting to make sure that we do the very best job we can at this committee, in terms of, we have a lot of expertise around the table, and we want to make sure that that knowledge is utilized. And then you can also see there in the project risks on our charter. You can see there where it says conflict between federal, state, and local goals and interests. And I think that's another area that I think just goes to show about the level of thought that we have put into that to make sure that we're staying fluid with everything. And so with that, sorry, Mindy, for holding you up. I think you were up next, and we'll go to Dave after that.
No problem. Just a quick comment. I kind of agree with Amanda. If we have a sort of implicit expectation, we should make it explicit. And Jim's suggestion was a good one. And there is a sentence, that says that the proposer should propose how the work shall progress, including the number, frequency, and content of meetings. And maybe we just kind of put that language from later on in that section where we make it a little bit less on them to propose that timeline and say, we expect, that this will be an iterative engagement process.
Thank you. Dave, and then we'll go to Chris. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. Top of page 2, it starts in talking about project description and scope. And I was just looking at E, where it says consult with state training and education agencies. And so to broaden that a little bit, there are some, private training and education agencies that provide opportunities and career paths. So I don't know if we should consider changing state training to publicly available or some other form of wording there, just not to narrow us to just state training.
I like that input. Craig.
Could we say state and private or public private?
Yeah, I'm fine either way. I thought publicly available would include state and private.
Okay.
And, theoretically, a consultant would have access to those agencies for answering survey questions. And then the other comment I had is under the same page there, going further down under the comprehensive assessment and report scope. F says identify challenges faced by the forest sector in retaining and recruiting the forestry workforce. And then G goes on, to develop recommendations to enhance the recruitment. And so, that flow is really good, but, I just noodling on it, challenges, is that broad enough to cover what I would refer to as deterrence? So, if you're a young aspiring individual that, is interested in representing the forestry sector in some way, and you pick up the front lines of the newspaper and it talks about all the bad things that are happening as a result of forest management in your community, I mean, that may be a deterrent. And so, is there an opportunity here for more positive messaging and putting the whole sector in a more positive light that would potentially attract, recruit, and retain more individuals?
I think that's great input, and I feel the same way. I don't know. I think I'd like to ask, just openly talk to Craig and and Todd with the input of the other folks sitting at this table. Well, I guess I'll ask you too, Dave. I mean, what are like, maybe you were asking the question how we can do that, but if you have any ideas on how that can come to fruition, I'd love to hear that, because I agree. I think it's important to kind of keep that factor in mind, because, you know, we've all saw those headlines before. And if you're not sitting at a table like this, or you don't have, I guess, a certain approach to things, you may let that significantly impact your understanding or your want to get involved when really you could be an asset to do that. So do you have any ideas, Dave? Feel free to throw them out if you have any ideas, and maybe how to make that more, I don't know if we want to say pleasing, but make that kind of more enticing to somebody.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of it, you know, being part of the report scope, and how would, you know, the grantor of this RFP study that, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's definitely relatable to kind of what we're wanting to get out of here. We're really looking at the workforce within the forestry sector and all the different variables involved with it. And I think without a doubt, that's definitely a variable worth looking at, and I think making the potential contractor aware of that. That's something to look at. And I know kind of what you were getting at. How do we word that in kind of the report scope to kind of echo that? And like you said, currently it's identified challenges faced by forestry sector in retaining and recruitment, and then developing recommendations to enhance the recruitment and retention. If you don't think that's sufficient to get that point across, like I said, I'd love to hear maybe some input. Anybody else kind of on the committee maybe have some input to that? With that said, I think I'll bounce over to Chris and then John, and if theirs happen to relate to that question, great. If not, Dave, let's loop back around to it. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. I don't disagree with Dave. I don't have a lot to add to that part, partly because I need to get going to another meeting that started at 2 o'clock and they're waiting on me. But I just wanted to clarify what, as I read the definition of the forestry sector, that does not include mill manufacturing. And if it does, it should more explicitly say that. And I'm presuming that it doesn't. I am presuming that the provision of forestry products is not the same as forest products such as lumber, plywood, things like that. But I just wanted clarification, because that's a whole, you know, there are a number of folks that have worked on workforce issues in for manufacturers as a part of advanced manufacturing workforce efforts.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that we're clear one way or the other.
Sure. I will say real quick here, if you look on page 1, the 4th paragraph down, it does say, for the purposes of this RFP, forestry sector means private business, nonprofit organizations, educational institutes, and then it goes on to say that are engaged in logging, forestation, wildland fire prevention, suppression, construction and maintenance of roads, and then aggregate production of forestry products, trucking related to forestry, tree services, whatnot. And then it goes on to talk more and more about that. So I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Todd or Craig, but I believe it does encompass that. And I'm sure that's definitely part of what we'll want looked at. If that's wrong, Todd, definitely please chime in. But no, I believe that's taken in account. Did that answer your question, John? What was that, John, that asked the question? I'm sorry about that. Chris, I mean.
With Chris.
No, yeah, that was Chris that asked the question. And so that's what I was, because there was so much specificity with all of the things that I would say are outside of the four walls of a manufacturing facility. There's much more specificity. And then things that I would consider manufacturing jobs, there's not that much specificity, but it does say provision of forestry products. That's why I just wanted clarification, because I had actually assumed that based on the definition, it was not the intent to capture mill manufacturing jobs. I'm not saying I don't want it to. I just want clarification one way or the other.
Sure.
There are workforce challenges up and down the supply chain from the woods through distribution. So
sure. Let's get that. Craig and Todd, any input on that? If you know specifically if that is something included, and if not, it is too. I can stick around. I just want to be respectful of other folks that need to hop off. So I'd like to get that question answered, because it sounds like.
And Amanda probably has perspective.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
She worked the bill, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll call on Amanda then, and then we'll go to John. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I'll just cover that really quick.
Good.
Really quick first for you, Chris, because I know you gotta go. But yeah, the intent is that it includes all of the sector. So that whether that's, working in a mill, working for the feds, working for a logging outfit, the legislative intent is that it includes everybody.
Okay.
That's what I thought. Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate that. And thank you, Chris. Appreciate the question and appreciate your input, and hopefully to further engage with you. John, go ahead, and then we'll go to Mindy.
Couple points. The first one was about just echoing Amanda's point of it needs to be explicitly stated about the prior issue. I think that goes for the manufacturing here. It'd be a quick add. If the intent is that, it should be explicitly stated, because I think if one of us that in up to our waist right now in this has a question about it, it certainly will reflect down the road. So I think it's a good one to tidy up. The other one goes back. I think Todd and I had a conversation after the continuous improvement meeting, and there was concern over the process or deficiencies in the bidding process, or when the thing goes out for RFP, that we were getting one repeat contractor that kept coming back, and there was concern over optics of that, and there were some things discussed. I think Craig brought it up as well. And so I was wondering if is there anything we can do to head that off, so when we put this thing out, that we don't come back and start wringing our hands and worrying about the optics of this same contractor getting virtually every state survey or state study contract.
Hey, good to hear your voice again, John. I did some work after that kick meeting, and after you and I talked, as I said I would, and I talked with Derek Disney over in procurement about that dilemma that surfaced. He said that, yes, we can do something about it. We have already, we being Doug and I, primarily given him the names of some contractors that we have worked with previously that have conducted assessments for us. The other thing I was going to say in addition to that, as we wrapped up this portion of and closed out the meeting, was that I asked him, could we request, toss out the request to the committee itself that if they had any recommendations in terms of organizations that could potentially be responders to the RFP, get those recommendations and add them to the list. And he said, absolutely. So if any of you have ideas around that, please don't hesitate to send information to Doug and I, and let us know, and we'll make sure they get added to the list. That said, and I know you all know this, if it comes down to the fact where one of those entities that you may have a potential conflict of interest with, is selected as the one that needs to be approved by this committee to actually be awarded the contract, you'd have to recuse yourself with a conflict of interest. But I know you all know that, but I work with the state, so I often say those things. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Todd. Let's bounce over to Amanda, and I think Mindy might have had her hand up. I'm not sure. Maybe it went back down, but let's start with, I think Amanda was up there first. Go ahead, Amanda.
I can let Mindy go. Mindy, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't know if maybe Mindy was up before you. Just go ahead, Mindy. Thank you.
My comment was covered, so that's good.
So my question, and maybe this gets kind of to Dave, to Cooner's question, is I'm wondering, this might be outside of the scope of the RFP, but again, to the point of trying to make our implicit expectations explicit, maybe there's an opportunity to have or request that the contractor does some sort of a subcommittee survey of our kind of feelings, experiences, understanding of some of the issues, to ensure that there are pieces that are not arbitrarily left out. And that maybe that's, a first step, although I don't want to taint the data, right? We want it to be objective, but there is subjectivity to it as well, just inherently. So to try to get at some of those pieces, maybe there's something that we can do there.
Coach Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, Amanda. You are absolutely spot on. And I think in our efforts to try and make sure that we reached all four corners of the state with the body here, this committee, to make certain that we had a great cross section of thought and engagement. I completely agree with that. And I think we probably should have that statement made in the statement of work that their first priority as a contractor is to have that discussion with the steering committee folks. So that was part of my objective in making sure that we had as much representation around the state as we possibly could get. And I'm also glad that you guys had a conversation about the manufacturing sector. I don't think that we have it well enough defined, and it needs to be. But I think all the points you guys have touched on are things that we each individually need to make sure that contractor understands. Now, the challenge is, where do we put it in the scope of work so that the contractor understands that's what they're bidding on? Because otherwise we're going to end up with something less than we want. A contractor doesn't fully understand the complexity of this work. So, gee, Todd, Sydney, I'm not sure how you get it in there, but you've got this recorded, so hopefully we can get that done.
Todd, do you see any any issue, or would you need any clarification from anybody here on how to put that in there, or what exactly would be put in there? I just want to make sure you fully understand what this committee is kind of asking for in terms of what should be put in the scope.
Yes, I think I have a pretty good understanding. I've taken notes. I'll double check with the minutes, and then I'll pull something together and I'll float it as we've been doing, Craig and Harris, with the two of you for your review. In the event that I've missed something or you'd like to wordsmith it a little bit differently than what I come up with, and then of course Doug will have a chance to take a look at it as well. So yeah, we'll move quickly, but cautiously, to make sure that we capture it to the liking of folks.
Great. I appreciate that, Todd. Go ahead, Amanda.
Sorry, I've got another question, kind of going back to the initial question that Jim posed. There definitely are going to be different techniques at how to get to these, this information in different parts of the sector. And I'm wondering, not sure if it needs to be included here in the statement of work and the scope of work for the RFP, but if we want to organize ourselves in any way that relates to sector expertise, parts of the sector, in coming up with ideas and helping guide the consultant in a direction that gets them to the right data sources, that gives them access to and knowledge of studies that exist in any one given area. Because I know, like with OSU, there's been Rajit Penwar has done some interesting stuff on demographics in the forest sector. Now, that looked just at NAICS codes and in-plan modeling, which doesn't necessarily take into consideration some of the challenges around capturing data around the contract sector side. But, you know, like, for instance, there's going to be interesting ways to try to capture that in different parts of the sector. And again, not sure if we need to include something within the RFP to try to outline the complexity of the sector, such that the person or the entity that is applying and writing and trying to develop some sort of process delivers on what the expectation is of this group. As Commissioner Pope, I think, outlined, that we don't want to end up with something less than because we were so generic in our RFP and statement of work. And I don't really have any solutions right now, Todd, so I apologize. I typically don't like to outline problems when I don't have a solution, but.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. Yeah, and those are really important factors to keep in mind too, because we do want this to be the best outcome it can. Go ahead, Mindy.
Yeah, I was just going to speak to your point, Amanda. I completely agree. And I think maybe one easy way to get that is just to state that we want in the RFP a description of where they're going to get the data from, because I think that will allow us to see if they have the necessary depth. I'm really familiar with a lot of those data sets. And that way, if we don't tell them to be specific, we won't know. And then they may only use Bureau of Labor Statistics, right, when there are other opportunities. So I think if we just ask them to detail what data sets they're going to use, how they're going to go about collecting this data, that would enable us to see if they have the proper depth.
Yeah, it'd probably help us in our identification of where they might have gaps or are lacking. I don't think that we expect any one contractor to know it all, but that would probably help when we come back for that kickoff meeting to bring them additional details and recognize that I think the majority of the folks on here, if not every single person on this subcommittee, is very committed to this work and has a deep breadth of understanding. And so we're all probably going to start thinking about what we would propose. And, you know, I have full confidence in that. So however we can help make sure that we get to that final result within the whatever we see from the contractor or the people who are pulling together proposals, I think that would be great. Thanks, Mindy.
Yeah, and I think the talent will be communicating that to the contractor in an efficient way prior to them, I guess when they're submitting things, to then ask those questions about, how they plan on utilizing that data, where they plan on getting it. And I think it's significantly important that we utilize everybody on this committee, because I can't remember if it was Amanda or Mindy, but mentioned that the expertise, how why all of us have this investment in the forestry industry. So many of us have expertise in particular sectors that I think is really important to utilize that. That's the whole reason we have you guys sitting here. So I appreciate the input, Amanda and Mindy. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, you all have seen the timeline and in all the different deliverables and the tasks and the dates that we've put in there. So here we are without an approved RFP at this point, and I don't know how we could possibly approve it without making the adjustments that we need to, so you can review them. So the challenge that we have right now is, when can I get all of you to come back and after you've reviewed these changes and acknowledge them and approve them, so that we can get this thing out on the street.
Thanks for looping us back to that, Craig, because that's I think priority number one. So as Craig said at the beginning, he wasn't going to be surprised if there was going to be some input on what needs changed. So I think obviously the first step is making those changes to the RFP and then getting that out and awarded ASAP, so that way we can start that. Josh, did you have something to add?
Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, no worries. But yeah, so with that said, and Todd and Craig, I can defer to you guys on this, but do we want to just have maybe Sydney throw out another doodle poll? No, okay, great. I see some head nods. So okay. So definitely keep an eye out for that coming through on your email, because that's going to be significant to gather again. So
does it seem reasonable? Thanks for that, Harris. And Craig, I mean, that's where my mind was too. Does it seem reasonable to try and shoot for something maybe next week at noon? Typically, when we run into a situation like this, when we want to get something to happen quickly, given the busyness of everybody's schedules, if we shoot for that noon hour or half hour, whatever it would be, maybe it's just 30 minutes actually, we stand a better chance of getting a meeting scheduled than just about any other time. That's just been my experience.
okay, great. Yeah. So without looking at everybody's calendar and diving into that rabbit hole, were you thinking like Monday the 17th then, Todd, something like that? Or I mean, like just any time next week, we'll have a doodle poll go out then.
Yeah, I was just trying to help Sydney narrow it down since we got her here, and just get sort of an anecdotal nod of heads from folks on the screen as to that sort of a strategy. She can toss in some others, obviously. I think she's got up to 20 with the free one we used. But it just might help to target the 12:30 to 12:30 to 1 o'clock, times 5, that's 10. You got a few others to toss in there to see where we can get the 9 we need to have a quorum and approve the RFP.
Okay. So with that said, do we feel like by next week when we do gather that some of these changes can be outlined in that RFP?
Oh, I was hoping way before that. My intention will be, unfortunately, I have to jump off. I've got a 2:30, but I'll come back to this right after that and try and get some language into the RFP highlighted and then pop it over to you, Craig and Doug, to review. And then once we go back and forth and think and feel good about it, we can send out to the rest of you committee members for your review and comments. And then I think we're good to go. I would think that we could get that done this week, Harris.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah, I guess I'm sorry, Amanda, I jumped over you, but just a caution to hurrying up with the RFP. I mean, that's probably some of the most critical work that we can do, is laying that foundation of expectations as to the product that we want. So I would rather be late on this and early on some other things, that if I got a vote in the matter.
You do.
Well, we could definitely shoot for the following week if that would give us a little bit more turnaround time.
I mean, I think meeting again frequently is good, Todd.
Okay.
Rather than satisfying for mediocre, I would rather extend our timeline and do better in the RFP.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and so I mean, I'm on the same note, and I agree with you, Dave, and it sounds like Todd, and I'm sure Craig on the same note. With that said, maybe we proceed as planned in terms of Todd getting the feedback or utilizing the feedback we got today to then edit that, and then when we meet next week, instead of it being kind of the idea that next week will be the final stamp, it may be the final stamp, but also that will open it up for maybe a second round of review, and then at that point, maybe in terms of Todd saying review, extending it one more week. I think that will give us some time to at least have a good look at it next week and say, you know what, I think there's a couple other things we'd like to change. And because I agree, Dave. I think there's other places where we can save that time and utilize it more here, where this is kind of the foundation of what's going to be echoed through here. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Harris. I think that's a good tact. And I was just going to say, maybe we can all agree that it's the co-chair's prerogative to make that determination based on like, I know next week is really a tough week for me, so I probably won't be able to make anything next week. However, I really want to. And so you kind of, introspect to that. If there's a lot of people that aren't able to make it, but are able to provide some feedback, and you're seeing, hey, we're not quite there yet, plus in conversation for the folks that can make it, I would completely support your guys' determination of, let's kick this to the voting to another meeting. So just want to get that support on the record.
Great, thank you, Amanda. So in terms of the action item and approving the RFP, we kind of have that dialed in now, how we're going to proceed with that. Any other questions, comments, concerns? It looks like in terms of next steps in future meetings, we had kind of discussed what that's going to look like. And as always, I appreciate Todd for a lot of the footwork that'll go on. And I appreciate you as well, Todd, wanting to get that happening ASAP. While it is important we spend time and structure that at this stage, as Craig mentioned, you start looking at that timeline, and it makes you definitely know that we need things to start moving forward. So, like I said, any final closing comments or concerns, and I think I'll let Craig wrap it up. So.
Yeah, so I guess the first and foremost, when I put out the invitation for this, I said we're guessing at a cadence for these meetings at least monthly. I am quite willing, and hopefully you will be too, to speed that up or move those up a little bit. It is quite apparent to me that the process that we've got to go through here for approving the RFP document and reviewing potential contractors and approval, we're going to need to move that right along. So we may need to meet more often. So I appreciate that everybody's indicating they're willing to look at a doodle poll. We're probably going to have a couple of those that are going to speed it up. And then I think once we get the contractor posted, then I think we can probably put this on a more scheduled cadence. But I think we're going to have a little bit of calendar chaos here for the next 2 months while we're trying to get all this settled. But I'm completely in the same spot with Dave. Let's pump the brakes wherever we need to and really discuss what we want as an outcome. We only have one shot at this money. We only have one shot. So we need to make certain that we do the very best we can with this investment. And I'm really hopeful for a strong outcome here that we can do something with. Because nothing will aggravate me more than to have gone through this process, spend all this money, and then have a document that's shelved.
I agree. Okay, so moving forward, we got the addition to the RFP Todd will work on. He'll get that to Craig and I to take a peek at. And then next week, for the doodle poll, we'll follow up next week and look at that edited RFP. And then at that time, determine if there's any additional edits before approving or potentially approving at that time. I did want to also send a reminder that we were also discussing the committee recommendation for contractors. So I definitely don't want that to leave your mind that between now and the next time we meet, specifically, if there's anything that comes up, there's a couple that come to my mind. I don't know if I'll throw them out there or not, but that might be better safe than sorry to just throw out those contractors. If in all the capacities we work with, I'm sure some of us work with some folks that may be able to conduct a survey that aren't the one individual that's been getting all the bids. So with that said, anything else to close us out, Todd, or shall we conclude? We're only 27 minutes behind. That's not too bad.
No, thank you, Harris. And thank you, Craig. Great job. I think it was a good meeting. I've got my marching orders. Sydney, thank you ahead of time for helping with doodle polls. And thank you all for being here and your commitment to the committee.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you, Sydney. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Craig. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day.